Ah, yes, Sub-Saharan Africa, a region filled with beautiful cultures, the place where they shot the penguins of Madagascar movies, and where my Nigerian uncle that wants to send me $10 million if only I provide him with my credit card information lives in. But it's also the global capital of systematic corruption, extreme poverty, violent crime, and pointless civil wars. Unfortunately, the region is just a collection of 48 failed states that are on the brink of all-out war between them, basically the Walmart version of the Balkans. But if you are paying attention, you know there are 49 nations in Sub-Saharan Africa, not 48. So, am I wrong, dear viewer? No, I am never wrong, because one of them is actually doing pretty well for itself. And in case you suffer from short-term memory loss and don't remember what thumbnail you clicked on, I'm talking about Botswana. Their economy and standards of living are similar to those of China and Thailand, and that fact becomes even more impressive when we look at their neighbors. Those guys have no idea how to run a stable currency. Those guys are always fighting wars between them for absolutely no reason. South Africa is quite literally the definition of failed state in the dictionary, and those guys are actually pretty chill, not gonna lie. They have the highest GDP per capita and human development index in the region. There is so little corruption, they even outperform European nations like Greece and Italy, though to be fair, the bar isn't all that high. They are becoming a finance center for the region, and in their entire history, every election has been free, fair, and non-violent. So how did they do it? And can the rest of Africa repeat their successes? Firstly, even before colonization, Botswana was actually pretty dope. They had a basic form of democracy, they elected leaders based on experience and capabilities, and they even managed to centralize power, something that other African nations had quite a lot of trouble with. Around the mid-1800s, let's just say the Europeans were doing some not-so-nice things in Africa, and it became clear to the Botswanan government it was only a matter of time before they also got colonized. Realizing the absolutely terrifying possibility of getting annexed by the French, people, or even worse, Belgium, they decided to at least get the best possible oppressors they could find. So basically, they sent their 3 leaders to the British.
Help us, don't let us become friends! I can't deal with those people! Just take us over before those French fuckers!
Basically, Botswana was like a dog desperately begging to get adopted at a shelter, and the British simply didn't give a fuck. And the reason is pretty simple. Botswana kinda sucks. It has very few natural resources, the climate is very inhospitable, and the nation is mostly empty. It's pretty clear your nation is complete dog shit, when the guys that invaded 90% of the entire planet don't even want to annex it for free. But luckily for the Botswanans, in classic British fashion, the moment they realized the Germans expressed interest in invading the territory, they instantly annexed Botswana just to piss off the Germans. The fact that Botswana was kinda useless turned out to be a blessing in disguise. The Brits basically built a rail line connecting mines in the north of the country with South Africa, and just left the Botswanans alone to rule themselves, giving them a level of autonomy very few African nations experienced at the time. They actually cared so little, they gave them independence simply because they asked very politely. But while independence was easy, building a country from scratch wasn't so much. They were completely reliant on British economic aid. Only 100 out of the 500,000 inhabitants had received high school education. Only 12 kilometers of paved roads existed in the entire nation, and they didn't even have their own currency. Definitely not a great start for a nation. This is Botswana's first ever president, Seretse Khama, and quite honestly, he is a fucking legend. When he took power in 1966, the nation was pretty much a disaster, but by the end of his life in 1980, he transformed it into one of the fastest growing economies, not just in Africa, but in the entire world. His first order of business was establishing stable institutions, creating their own currency, and protecting business and property rights. While those sound simple, even much more developed nations still struggle with those basic things, but although his reforms were phenomenal, there was still a problem. They simply didn't have any money, or any industries that could make them money. And because they lacked a coastline, they couldn't even compete on the global marketplace in a cost-effective manner. But fortunately for them, they got lucky in the 70s. They found diamonds, loads and loads of diamonds. Because of their low weight, it was inexpensive to ship them out of the country, which meant the nation finally had a reliable source of income. At this point, the Botswana leader, just like most of the African leaders, could spend the money on luxury yachts and golden toilets, but instead he spent the money on improving healthcare, building out a quality education system, and improving infrastructure. He was so successful that he got re-elected a total of 4 times, and his party that followed in his footsteps has gotten over 50% of the votes in all but one of the nation's elections, proving how effective he was. But enough with the Botswana glazing. Sure, it's achieved great progress, but by global standards, the nation certainly isn't a perfect utopia. Many issues like nepotism and mass unemployment are slowly destroying the Botswanan economy, and their over-reliance on diamonds is hard to overlook. More than 80% of all their exports are made up of them, and if if their price for any reason crashes, it might completely destroy their economy. What makes this even worse is that the policies that made them successful in the first place are starting to go away. Free speech is under attack, the government is starting to look more and more like a dictatorship by the day, and they have even implemented protectionist policies which might negatively affect the nation in the long run. But the greatest indicator of their economic challenges is simply their GDP. From the 1970s to the 2000s, the nation was one of the fastest growing on the planet, but after 2011, for the most part, the economy has completely stagnated. While obviously the nation is a beacon of stability in the most unstable region on Earth, we still have to acknowledge that they aren't all that far away from falling into an economic crisis and failing similar to the way most of their neighbors did. Anyway, like the video if you liked it, dislike if you didn't, and subscribe to the channel because my entire sense of self-worth is dependent on it.